Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. Good morning. Coffee time. Coffee time. If you don't have a cup, you may want to grab one. I'm going to just talk about some things with you guys today. First off, I want to answer some questions and I want to address some issues that I've been seeing. I have noticed in recent times that some people don't feel quite satisfied with the free videos that they get. They don't like the way that I have been speaking about issues including domestic terrorists, and they think that I should have sympathy for these people. So first things first, we need to talk about what it is to be a full human being. A full human being who isn't shackled mentally or physically. A full human being who is capable of feeling and emoting the entire spectrum of God-given emotions, and who is capable of responding at times when needed, a time to be righteously angry, a time to be chill, a time to, okay, take a breath, step back, what's going on here, a time to, oh my gosh, let me help you. There is a misconception that if you are a healthcare provider, or if you are in an occupation, I'm going somewhere with this, so pay attention. If you're in an occupation that historically is shrouded by images of tenderness and maternal sweetness, in order to be a good healthcare provider or a good whatever, that you are not allowed to feel righteous anger at people who are destroying your country and who have been destroying it for a while. And folks, I want to liberate and unshackle from that illusion. There are a lot of very simple-minded, stupid people who are going to try and tell you, because they've tried to tell me for a long time, that because you're a nurse, and I have a lot of nurses who watch this, so I'm talking to you girls and guys, they're going to try and tell you that if you are unsympathetic to people who are actively trying to destroy the lives of others, that you're a bad nurse. So my next question is, how many felons have you cared for? Question. Oh, none? Okay. Now, how many people have you held in your arms while they died? How many people's babies have you brought to them for the first time? You know, people are not used to experiencing life the way it was meant to be experienced, and they are afraid of these emotions. They are afraid of what they're seeing, and they don't believe their eyes. With the news, they don't believe their eyes. With the way that people act is probably the main reason why good people are so slow to use deadly force when it's far and away justified. They just don't believe their eyes. And folks, we are in a time where people are not believing their eyes. I'm not saying that there aren't things that are set up, that there are false flags or anything like that, but they're not believing their eyes. They're not believing when they drive down the street that a socialist would, but for the corruption of the Democratic Party, they do not believe that a socialist would have had a darn good chance at being president of the United States. And I mean a darn good one. They don't believe their eyes. So folks, you have reason to be concerned. You have reason to feel the way that you do. And you have reason, despite whatever occupation it is that you're in, to embrace a righteous and justified anger at these people. Okay? Now, the question is what you do with it. I like to use, when I do feel that way, a negative emotion to empower me and to give me momentum to do the things that I know I need to do, to harness it just like a turban and discipline myself to do what I need to do. But sometimes, guys, you've got to call a spade a spade. And it may be my Scots-Irish ancestry that's coming out real loud and strong here, and some of these people from nations where they've been subjugated and their ancestors came over here and like, oh, I'm so afraid of this. Guys, no. This is not the time to be trying to whittle down those emotions, and it's not the time right now to try and softly placate and woo yourself and soften those feelings. Like, there's a reason why they're there, okay? Have you ever met somebody who, even like before you knew them, before they opened their mouth, you're like, I really don't like that person. I do not get a good feeling about that person. Usually, you're right. Listen to your gut. There's a book called The Gift of Fear, like Evan Becker. Can be a little bit anti-gun or pro-gun control at times, but the core issues of what he's saying are critical to understand. If your subconscious is giving you signals strong signals, visceral responses to people, then stay away from them. Listen to what it's saying. Listen to yourself. Believe your eyes and listen to your guts. And the problem that I'm seeing with so many people who are so afraid of themselves, and they're so afraid to feel righteously angry and justifiably angered, they're feeling so constrained because they've lived their entire lives in front of a screen where their eyes are lying to them. Or they've lived their entire lives in a job that they hate, where they just get up and drag in the morning and go and punch the card and then come back home and hope they have enough to retire on until they finally kick it. They don't live. People don't live. And I'm telling you guys to live, and part of living is embracing the full spectrum of not only your emotions, but allowing yourself to believe what your eyes are telling you. The nation that we have, I'm just going to go ahead and put this right out there on the table. The nation that we have is going to cease to exist. Okay. The nation that we have is going to cease to exist. From its inception, it's been a volatile little creature and a wily little confederation. When we first started, we had some colonies with different types of people in them. There's nothing wrong with that. Our colonies, before they became the United States, plural, not singular, plural, before they became the United States, they were home to vastly different types of people. Maryland was the first Catholic colony. Pennsylvania was for Quakers. The South, a completely different makeup of people. And the Anti-Federalists knew this. The Anti-Federalists knew that this nation, with its expansive landmass and with all of her different types of people, could not long survive a central government, because that central government was not going to adequately represent the constituents equally. It would consolidate power in the cities and leave the people in the smaller states and the smaller areas population-wise at the mercy of the whims of the people in the larger ones. That is what the war between the states in this first Civil War was about. This nation has grown so much population-wise. We've expanded to the point now where these differences between people, between regions, are the key reason why we're having such trouble. The coasts and the Northeast, New England area, want control over people's lives. They have the most restrictive laws, the most restrictive policies, and the people in rural areas, even in those states, like upstate New York, the people in rural areas and the people in states that historically have been much more hands-off, government speaking, and much more freedom inclined, they're going to come into direct clash again. That's what happened the first time, okay, with the war between the states. And you're seeing this happen again. But the way that it's going to play out in the years to come, it's going to be more like the American Revolution. The war that is coming on us is going to be nasty. It is going to involve a lot of probably urban warfare. It's going to involve division between families. All of this is prophesied, by the way, every single bit of it. The war that's coming is probably going to look more like the revolution. And the revolution in these cities and in these towns, you had loyalists to the crown, statists, call them what they are. You had statists, and then you had self-sufficient people, people who want to be left alone, okay? And they came into clash with each other. My grandfather, or my great-great-great, I think 7 great, Colonel Adam Alexander in North Carolina conducted raids on the Tories. He scared the living piss out of these people. He did what needed doing. You know why? Because these people were selling out their neighbors. They were essentially ratting people out for profit, okay? And that's what it's going to look like this time. I'm sorry to say it, but folks, to go back to what I said earlier, there's going to be a lot of people, because I've seen it on the channel, and I know that if I'm seeing it on the channel, that it's probably an echo of what is being thought in real life. People are saying that if you are a good, God-fearing person who loves the Bible, that you should feel sorry for these socialist and domestic terrorists in the process of a forcible felony who finally met consequences for their actions this past weekend, that you should feel sorry for them. No. And this is, I think, going to be manifesting itself more and more in the church. I'm going to speak about this too. The church is going to be one of the problems, I think. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to have the sifting of the wheat and the tares. You're going to have people in the church and in the pulpit who are going to try and whitewash the doctrines of the Bible to substantiate essentially supporting the status quo. They'll use Romans 13 left, right, and center. I've seen it. They will take it out of context. What they will try and do is to use Scripture to support the state. Okay? And when the state exists in its proper function, it exists to safeguard the natural rights God gave man and prevent them from essentially being, tyrannized. The Constitution was a blueprint against government because governments very rarely stay that way. They almost always evolve and have always evolved they have spiraled and avalanched into a tyrannical structure that oppresses people's rights instead of defending and protecting them. So the church, in times right now we're seeing it, is going to try and twist Scripture to substantiate the servitude to the state. And so people are going to find themselves more and more having to bat away the same stuff that I've been having to bat away. Like, you're not being Christ-like, or that's not very loving, or it's like, excuse me, when did loving Scripture and living a Scripture-based life mean being a slave? No thanks. If that's your version, then we probably don't read the same way. But you're going to get it from the church. And if you're a healthcare provider, you're going to get it from people who think that in order to be a good nurse or a good healthcare provider, that you have to take leave of your senses. My ability to be a good nurse depends only on my ability to execute the fundamentals of nursing in the way in which they are properly standardized. Let me explain something. People who seek to define, control, and ascribe appropriate behavior to others based on their occupation, you know who they are? Communists. Defining people based on their occupation, defining right and wrong boundaries based on their occupation. That's communistic thought. You're a nurse, therefore you should be this. And if you don't behave this way, then we'll just do this. Geez. I've heard it, man. I've heard it all. But folks, the Charlottesville issue, this is a big deal. This is a very, very big deal. And it is not going to be the first. Being prepared and being medically ready is part of why I've done this channel. But there are two parts to my name, patriot and nurse. One doesn't override, one isn't, like, nurse is not going to make me less of a patriot. If anything, being a better patriot makes me a better nurse. When you're getting ready for things like this, you have to understand that it will be nasty, jagged-edged, uncomfortable, and bloody. When you look back on recounts of history, everything seems so clear-cut, so just matter of fact. But I guarantee you, if you go back and you ask these people who are there at key points, they're going to tell you, and their memoirs have reflected as such, that quite often they were wrestling with internal turmoil as to whether or not it was the right thing to do. It's not clear-cut in the moment. But the things that you have to hold to, that you must always hold to, are natural rights. Natural rights from people, even if you don't believe in Scripture, natural rights. The ideology that is walking through our streets right now that seeks to absolutely crush natural rights is socialism. And McCarthy was right. Just being direct, y'all.